ordered by the Secretary to shoot unarmed civilians with no observable weapons who were not presenting any hostile acts of hostile intent, would you relay that order down to your chain of command?
No, Senator.
This may look like a routine confirmation exchange, but it's actually a stress test of military accountability in a politicized era. What's really being tested here is whether lawful restraint still overrides pressure from the highest levels of power. This raises broader questions about how democratic systems protect ethical standards when authority demands flexibility. In this video, we'll break down how hesitation, process language, and legal deflection reveal a deeper institutional vulnerability, and why that matters far beyond this hearing.
Thank you very much, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do echo my colleagues' concern that President Trump is marching us towards another forever war in Venezuela and throwing around threats to do the same elsewhere, from Greenland to Colombia to Iran. After 23 years of service in the Army myself, the lessons that I learned as a young lieutenant about the professionalism and code of conduct and ethics of military officers remain with me to this day. I know firsthand the cost in blood that service members and their families suffer when an administration like this one uses military force based on a flimsy pretext. This administration has come up with very questionable legal justifications what they're doing. They've untethered to any real national security threat with no realistic planning about what comes next. The administration says that it's all about warfighters, but we all know that it is fast to betray our warfighters. As we saw with the hearing on domestic deployments that I secured in December, President Trump is comfortable thrusting service members into legally unprecedented situations and leaving them out there to dry without legal protection. In Southcom, this administration's leaders have created questionable legal justifications for the use of military force. They've thrown military commanders under the bus instead of admitting that they likely ordered a war crime, and sidelined critical legal advisors. In fact, the very real reason that we're here today is because the former commander of Southcom, Admiral Halsey, was asked by SecDef Hegseth to step down after he expressed concerns over the, and I quote, murky legality of the boat strike campaign, end quote, according to the Wall Street Journal. General Donovan, I'm concerned about how this administration might ask you to do what they might ask you to do in this role, given what they asked your predecessor to do. And I want to understand how you would navigate that in a way that would safeguard your oath to the American people and to uphold the Constitution by protecting responsible American use of force and protecting the service members under your command. If ordered by the Secretary to shoot unarmed civilians with no observable weapons who were not presenting any hostile acts of hostile intent, would you relay that order down to your chain of command?
No, Senator.
Thank you. Let's do another example. If ordered by the Secretary of Defense to shoot harassing fire into a city or a village indiscriminately where we are not actively engaged in hostilities, would you issue that order to your subordinates?
Senator, I believe the hypothetical aspect of that question, I have to identify that that is a very significant, serious question that I take to heart. For the fact that the detail and the planning process to get to a point where one of those very hard decisions have to be made, that's a significant effort. A commander-led process in planning to ensure that all aspects of the operation take consideration, to include the legal advice of the legal counsel on that planning staff. My responsibility is to lead that planning staff. I don't believe that that situation you described, Senator, would be something that would happen out of the blue. The conditions had been set. The leaders have been given the authority, the rules of engagement to understand their rules. And I can't commit or comment on a situation that I did not plan, participate in to get to that point of the point of decision that you're referencing, Senator.
I think this is a pretty straightforward answer. Let me try a more straightforward answer. Do you agree there would be a crime in international law under the Geneva Conventions for the United States military to conduct violence toward persons who are taking no active part in hostilities or have laid down their arms?
Senator, again, I would like to really better understand the situation that is being laid out here in the staff planning process that got there to that position before we'd have to make that very hard decision.
Okay, well, I'm really troubled by that answer because the specific examples I cited are not hypothetical. President Trump pardoned a former Army officer, Clint Lawrence, who was convicted of murder by a jury of his peers for taking these very actions against non-combatants. In 2012, Lawrence ordered his soldiers to fire upon 3 unarmed Afghan men, killing 2 and wounding a 3rd. Lawrence was known to act with impunity. He pointed his weapon at a young child, ordered soldiers to fire from a tower in the general direction of villagers, and lied about receiving hostile fire, and even instructed one of his soldiers to falsify a report after the murders. And this is a man that SecDef Hegseth calls a good guy. These are the types of disturbing, lawless actions that the SecDef and the president regularly glorify. Trump has bandied the term hero to describe the likes of Eddie Gallagher, who posed with the body of a deceased teenager and who his fellow Iraq veteran said was, quote, okay with killing anything that moved, end quote. Let's be clear. President Trump is creating a climate in our military where lawlessness is rewarded, not punished. A climate where it is even realistic for me to ask you, what would you do if the President Secretary ordered actions that amount to war crimes? And it disturbs me that you could not answer those last two questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
The moment that just unfolded in this hearing will echo long after the gavel falls. It came when Tammy Duckworth, a combat veteran who understands the weight of command not as theory but as lived reality, asked a simple question with profound consequences. Faced with a scenario involving the use of force against unarmed civilians, the Pentagon nominee hesitated. He did not draw a firm line. He did not say, without condition or caveat, that such an order would be refused. Instead, he retreated into process, into planning cycles, into abstractions. And in that pause, in that unwillingness to answer plainly, something essential was revealed. Hearings like this are not academic exercises. They are moments when the nation tests whether those entrusted with immense authority understand the difference between power and responsibility. Duckworth framed her questions around duty, law, and moral clarity. She spoke from experience, from decades shaped by the consequences of decisions made far above the battlefield. Her concern was not hypothetical. It was rooted in history, in real events, and in a pattern of leadership that has blurred once clear boundaries. When the nominee answered no to the first scenario, there was a sense of relief. But that relief was short-lived. The follow-up question stripped away the comfort of easy responses. When asked whether indiscriminate fire into populated areas would violate international law, the nominee did not affirm the principle. He asked for more context. He deferred. He spoke of planning staffs and rules of engagement, as though the fundamental question depended on paperwork rather than conscience. This exchange matters because it exposes a deeper tension within American governance. The Constitution demands civilian control of the military, but it also demands fidelity to law. Officers swear an oath not to a leader, not to an administration, but to the Constitution itself. That oath is supposed to be the final safeguard when political pressure collides with ethical limits. When a nominee for high command cannot articulate those limits clearly, the safeguard weakens. Duckworth's reaction captured that danger. "I'm really troubled by that answer," she said, and the weight of those words filled the room. Troubled not because of partisan disagreement, but because of what uncertainty at the top signals to those below. In moments of crisis, ambiguity can cascade downward. If leaders hesitate, subordinates are left exposed, legally, morally, and personally. The broader context only deepens the concern. Duckworth pointed to a climate in which questionable actions have been excused, even celebrated by political leadership. When past misconduct is reframed as heroism, the message is unmistakable. Loyalty matters more than law. Outcomes matter more than restraint. That message does not stay confined to speeches or pardons. It seeps into culture. It reshapes incentives. It teaches those in uniform that the rules are flexible if the politics align. This is not merely about one nominee or one administration. It is about how a democracy preserves its moral compass while wielding unmatched power. The United States claims leadership not only through strength, but through adherence to standards that restrain that strength. International norms, military codes, and constitutional principles exist precisely to remove doubt in moments when emotions run high and commands come fast. When Duckworth asked whether violence against non-hostile individuals violates international law, she was not testing the nominee's memory of legal texts. She was testing his instinct. His refusal to answer directly suggested an instinct shaped by caution toward authority rather than courage in restraint. That distinction matters. History shows that the greatest failures of leadership often begin with small evasions, with the belief that clarity can wait until later. The hearing also exposes a broader pattern in modern governance, the substitution of procedure for principle. Planning processes are important. Legal counsel is essential. But there are moments when leaders must speak plainly, when the moral line is not negotiable. If everything depends on context, then nothing is truly forbidden. And if nothing is forbidden, accountability dissolves. This is why oversight hearings exist. They are not designed to embarrass nominees, but to protect the public. They force future leaders to confront the hardest questions before they hold the power to act on them. Duckworth's insistence on clarity was an act of guardianship, of service to those who wear the uniform and to the citizens who entrust them with authority. What we witnessed was not just a troubling answer, but a warning. A warning about how easily norms erode when leaders are unwilling to state what should never be done. A warning about the cost of elevating loyalty over law. And a warning that the strength of the American system depends not only on institutions, but on the moral courage of individuals within them. In the end, this moment forces a choice. Do we demand leaders who understand that some orders must be refused no matter the pressure? Or do we accept ambiguity at the highest levels of command? Democracies survive by answering those questions honestly, because when clarity fades at the top, the consequences fall on those with the least power to refuse. This is why hearings like this matter. This is why vigilance matters. And this is why independent scrutiny matters more than ever. If you believe the truth deserves a voice, and accountability must never be optional, subscribe to Liberty Report USA. Support our work to expose the deeper meaning behind the headlines, and to defend the principles that hold a free society together.